The blueprints blurred in front of me as I heard Caroline's voice drift through our bedroom wall at 2 in the morning. Her laugh was different, softer, more intimate than anything I'd heard from her in months. I set down my pencil and listened to the cadence of her whispered conversation, catching fragments that made my stomach clench. "I can't wait to see you tomorrow." "No, he's working late again. He never pays attention anyway." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My name is Elias Turner, and I'm a structural engineer in Millbrook, a mid-sized industrial city where everyone knows everyone's business. At 40, I thought I had my life mapped out like one of my building schematics. 15 years married to Caroline, a medical billing coordinator at Millbrook General Hospital. We had a routine, a mortgage, and what I believed was a solid foundation. That night, listening to my wife plan her deception, I realized how wrong I'd been about everything. The next morning, Caroline hummed while making coffee, something she hadn't done in months. She wore a new blouse I didn't recognize and had taken extra time with her makeup. "You're up early," she said without looking at me. "Couldn't sleep. Big project timeline." I watched her reflection in the kitchen window. "You seem happy today?" "Just excited about work. We're implementing new software systems." Her smile felt rehearsed. "I might be late tonight. Training session." "On a Friday?" "Healthcare doesn't stop for weekends, Elias." Her tone carried that familiar edge of condescension. Some of us can't just draw pretty pictures all day. I'd heard variations of that insult for years, but today, it hit differently. Today, I knew she was lying. After Caroline left, I sat in our kitchen drinking cold coffee and staring at the space where she'd stood. The house felt hollow, echoing with 15 years of gradually diminishing conversations. When had we stopped talking? When had I become someone she could dismiss so easily? My phone buzzed. A text from Danny Kozloff, a crane operator on my current project. "Saw your wife at Murphy's bar last night. Thought you should know she wasn't alone." My hands shook as I typed back, "What do you mean?" "She was with some guy. Looked pretty cozy. Sorry, man." Murphy's bar. Caroline had claimed she was at her book club last Thursday. I'd even asked how the discussion went, and she'd fabricated an entire conversation about some romance novel. I drove to Murphy's during my lunch break. The bartender, a weathered man named Rick, recognized me immediately. "Elias! Haven't seen you in a while. How's Caroline?" "That's actually what I wanted to ask you about. Was she here Thursday night?" Rick's expression shifted uncomfortably. "Yeah, she was here. With some guy from the hospital. Ronan something. They seemed close." Ronan Hale. I knew that name. Caroline had mentioned him before. Her new supervisor, recently transferred from the state capital. She'd described him as professional and dedicated to improving our department. "How close?" I asked. Rick glanced around the empty bar. "Look, Elias, I don't like getting involved in people's business, but they were holding hands, kissing. I figured maybe you two were separated or something." The drive back to work passed in a blur. Ronan Hale. I could picture him from Caroline's company Christmas party. Tall, silver-haired, expensive suit. The kind of confident smile that suggested he'd never been denied anything he wanted. That evening, Caroline came home at midnight, claiming the training had run long and they'd gone for drinks afterward to celebrate the successful implementation. "How was your book club Thursday?" I asked casually. She didn't miss a beat. "Oh, it was great. We discussed The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Really fascinating exploration of love and sacrifice." I nodded and went back to my blueprints. She'd had all day to research that book, probably looked it up on her phone during lunch. The lie was so smooth, so prepared, that I wondered how many others I'd swallowed without question. Over the next week, I began paying attention to details I'd previously ignored. Caroline's phone, which used to sit casually on counters, now lived permanently in her purse. She'd developed new interests, yoga classes that didn't exist at the gym she claimed to attend, work projects that required weekend meetings, friends I'd never met who supposedly needed emotional support at odd hours. The most telling change was physical. Caroline had always been attractive, but suddenly she was investing serious effort in her appearance. New clothes, expensive makeup, a gym membership she actually used. She looked better than she had in years, and none of it was for me. I started working out at Dugan's boxing gym, a run-down place near the industrial district. The owner, Marty Dugan, was a former Marine who'd trained local fighters for 30 years. He took one look at me hitting the heavy bag and knew I was working through something serious. "Wife or job?" he asked after my first session. "Wife." "Figured. You've got that particular kind of anger. Want to talk about it?" I found myself telling Marty everything. The lies, the distance, the growing certainty that my marriage was over. He listened without judgment, occasionally offering practical advice. "You got two choices," he said after I finished. "You can confront her and try to work it out, or you can start planning your exit strategy. But don't just sit there taking it. That'll eat you alive." "I need proof," I said. "Real proof." "Then get it. But be smart about it. Don't do anything that'll make you look like the bad guy when this goes public." Marty was right about the public part. In a city like Millbrook, divorce drama became community entertainment. I'd seen it happen to other couples. The whispered conversations at the grocery store, the awkward social dynamics as friends chose sides, the way children got caught in the crossfire. The proof came sooner than expected. The following Tuesday, I was reviewing structural plans when my phone chimed. A text from an unknown number containing a video file and a message. "Thought you should see this." The video was time-stamped from the previous evening, when Caroline had claimed to be helping her friend Janet through a crisis. It showed the entrance to the Millbrook Inn, a discreet hotel on the edge of town. Caroline and Ronan emerged together, his hand on the small of her back, her head resting against his shoulder. They kissed before getting into separate cars. I watched the video 3 times, each viewing adding another layer of humiliation. They looked comfortable together, like a couple who'd been intimate for months. This wasn't a new development. It was an established relationship. My phone rang, the same unknown number. "Hello? Is this Elias Turner?" A woman's voice, nervous. "Yes. My name is Beth Martinez. I work housekeeping at the Millbrook Inn. I sent you that video." "Why?" "Because I know what it's like to be lied to. My husband cheated for 2 years before I found out. I wish someone had told me sooner." She paused. "They've been coming in every Tuesday for the past 3 months. Always room 237, always pay cash." 3 months. While I'd been worrying about project timelines and mortgage payments, Caroline had been building an entire secret life. Tuesday evenings, when she claimed to be at yoga class, she was in room 237 with Ronan Hale. "Thank you," I said. "I'm sorry," Beth replied. "I really am." That night, I sat in my home office, staring at the video on my phone. Caroline was in the living room watching television, occasionally laughing at whatever show had captured her attention. The sound of her laughter, genuine and carefree in a way it never was around me anymore, felt like a physical blow. I began planning. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove to the public library. If I was going to confront this situation, I needed to understand my legal position. 2 hours of research into Michigan divorce law taught me several important facts. Adultery was grounds for divorce, financial assets acquired during marriage were typically split 50-50, and documentation was crucial. I also learned that Michigan was a no-fault divorce state, which meant Caroline's affair wouldn't necessarily impact the financial settlement. That knowledge sparked something cold and calculating in my chest. If the legal system wouldn't punish her betrayal, I'd have to find other ways to balance the scales. From the library, I drove to First National Bank and opened a personal checking account, transferring half of our savings, my legal right as a joint account holder. I also stopped the automatic deposit of my paychecks into our shared account, redirecting them to my new personal account. Caroline wouldn't notice immediately, but when she did, she'd understand that I knew. My phone buzzed with a text from Caroline. "Working late again tonight. Don't wait up. Tuesday, room 237. Instead of going home, I drove to the Millbrook Inn and parked across the street. At 6:30, Ronan's silver BMW pulled into the parking lot. At 6:45, Caroline arrived in her Honda. They didn't acknowledge each other in the parking lot, a practiced routine designed to avoid suspicion. I waited 30 minutes, then walked into the hotel lobby. Beth Martinez was behind the front desk, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and graying hair. "You're Elias," she said quietly. "I am. Thank you for the video." "Room 237, she confirmed. "They'll be there until about 9:30. I nodded and left. There was nothing to be gained by confronting them in the hotel room. That would be emotional, messy, and would put me at a disadvantage. Better to let them think their secret was safe while I gathered more information. Over the next week, I became a student of my wife's deception. I tracked her movements, documented her lies, and began building a comprehensive picture of her affair. Caroline had told me she was working late Thursday. Instead, she and Ronan had dinner at Giuseppe's, an upscale Italian restaurant downtown. Friday's girls' night out was actually drinks at Murphy's bar, followed by 2 hours at Ronan's apartment. The most painful discovery was how happy she seemed. In 15 years of marriage, I'd rarely seen Caroline as animated and joyful as she was in Ronan's company. Whatever she was getting from him, attention, excitement, validation, I apparently hadn't provided in years. That realization forced me to examine our relationship honestly. When had I stopped trying to impress her? When had our conversations become limited to logistics and complaints? When had we stopped being lovers and become merely roommates sharing expenses? The answer was gradual and mutual. We'd both checked out emotionally years ago, but I'd been content with the familiar routine while Caroline had sought something more exciting. The affair was wrong, but my complacency had created the conditions that made it possible. Still, understanding the why didn't diminish the betrayal. She could have asked for counseling, suggested a trial separation, or simply filed for divorce. Instead, she'd chosen deception, turning me into an unwitting fool while she explored her options. On Saturday morning, Caroline announced she was going shopping with her friend Kendra Flagg, who worked in HR at the hospital. Kendra was Caroline's closest friend, a sharp-tongued woman who'd never liked me. I'd always assumed it was because she thought Caroline had settled for less than she deserved. Now I wondered if Kendra knew about the affair. While Caroline was out, I searched our bedroom methodically. Hidden in her jewelry box, I found a burner phone I'd never seen before. The text message history told the entire story of her relationship with Ronan, intimate conversations, meeting arrangements, and discussions about their future together. One message thread made me freeze. Ronan, when are you going to tell him? Caroline, soon. I need to figure out the financial stuff first. I don't want to end up with nothing. Ronan, my lawyer says you're entitled to half of everything. The house, his retirement, all of it. Caroline, good. He owes me that much after 15 years of being married to someone who cares more about his blueprints than his wife. I photographed every message, then returned the phone to its hiding place. Caroline wasn't just cheating. She was planning to divorce me and take half of everything I'd worked for, all while playing the victim of a neglectful husband. That afternoon, she returned from shopping with new lingerie and a bottle of expensive perfume. She was getting dressed up for someone, but it wasn't me. I'm meeting Kendra for dinner, she announced. We're going to try that new place on 5th Street. Sounds fun. Tell Kendra I said hello. Caroline's smile faltered slightly. Sure. I waited until she left, then drove to 5th Street, The new restaurant she'd mentioned didn't exist. Instead, I found her car parked outside Ronan's apartment building. Standing in the shadows across the street, I could see them through his living room window. They were cooking together, laughing, acting like a couple who'd been together for years. Caroline wore the new lingerie under a silk robe I'd never seen before. She looked radiant, completely at ease in another man's home. My phone buzzed. A text from Caroline. "Dinner is amazing! Kendra says hi back." I typed a response. "Glad you're having fun. Love you." She replied with a heart emoji. The casual cruelty of that heart emoji, sent while she was half naked in her lover's apartment, crystallized something inside me. This wasn't just about physical or emotional connection. Caroline was actively enjoying the deception, taking pleasure in making me complicit in my own humiliation. That night, I lay in bed listening to Caroline shower off the scent of another man. She hummed while washing her hair, the same tune she'd been humming for weeks. When she slipped into bed beside me, she kissed my cheek and whispered, "Good night, honey." I stared at the ceiling until dawn, planning my next move. The following Monday, I took a long lunch and visited Ronan's apartment building. The doorman, a retired cop named Frank, was happy to chat about the tenants. "Mr. Hale? Yeah, nice guy. Quiet. Has a lady friend who visits regularly. Pretty brunette. Drives a Honda." "How regularly?" Frank shrugged. 3-4 times a week. Been going on for months. They seem happy together." "I'm sure they do." From there, I drove to Millbrook General Hospital. Caroline worked on the 3rd floor, but I took the elevator to the 5th floor administrative offices. The hospital's organizational chart was posted on the wall near the elevators, showing departmental structures and reporting relationships. Ronan Hale was listed as Supervisor Medical Billing Department. His boss was Janet Morrison, Director of Revenue Operations. Caroline reported directly to Ronan. A workplace affair between a supervisor and subordinate violated the hospital's ethics policy, which I'd researched online. If exposed, both Caroline and Ronan could face disciplinary action, including termination. I photographed the organizational chart, then took the elevator to the 3rd floor. Through the glass doors of the medical billing department, I could see Caroline at her desk, talking animatedly on the phone. She looked professional, competent, completely normal. No one would guess she was living a double life. Kendra Flagg's office was down the hall in Human Resources. Through her open door, I could see her reviewing personnel files. As Caroline's best friend and an HR employee, she was perfectly positioned to provide inside information about hospital policies, disciplinary procedures, and legal vulnerabilities. The pieces of Caroline's support network were becoming clear. Ronan provided the romance and excitement she craved. Kendra offered strategic advice and emotional validation. Together, they'd created a safe space for Caroline to plan her exit from our marriage while maximizing her financial advantage. That evening, Caroline announced another late work meeting. "We're restructuring the entire billing system," she explained. "It's going to require a lot of overtime over the next few weeks." "That sounds stressful." "It is, but Ronan is really supportive. He's making sure we have everything we need to succeed. He sounds like a good boss. The best I've ever had." Her smile was genuine and warm, the kind of smile she used to give me. After she left, I opened a bottle of whiskey and sat in my office, staring at the blueprints scattered across my desk. 15 years of marriage, reduced to evidence files and divorce planning. I thought about the house we'd bought together, the dreams we'd shared, the future we'd planned. All of it built on a foundation that had been crumbling for years while I was too distracted to notice. My phone rang. Marty from the gym. "How you holding up, Elias?" "I've got all the proof I need. Now I'm trying to figure out what to do with it." "What do you want to do?" That was the question I'd been avoiding. What did I want? A reconciliation seemed impossible. Caroline wasn't just cheating, she was actively planning to leave me. A quiet divorce would be expensive and would leave her free to continue her relationship without consequences. I want her to understand what she's done, I said finally. I want there to be consequences. Legal consequences or personal consequences? Both. Marty was quiet for a moment. Be careful, Elias. Revenge feels good in the moment, but it can cost you everything if you're not smart about it. I'm always smart about it. That's what I do. I plan structures that won't collapse under pressure. This isn't engineering, son. This is human emotion, and that follows different rules. After we hung up, I poured another whiskey and opened my laptop. If Caroline wanted to play games with information and strategy, I'd show her what a real strategic mind could accomplish. I began researching everything I could find about Ronan Hale. Ronan Hale's life was an open book for anyone willing to look. Social media profiles revealed a man proud of his accomplishments, photos from expensive restaurants, weekend trips to Chicago, a lifestyle that seemed beyond the salary of a hospital supervisor. His LinkedIn profile showed a career trajectory that included 3 job changes in 5 years, each move coinciding with departmental restructuring at his previous employers. A deeper dive into public records revealed more interesting details. Ronan had been divorced twice, both settlements involving allegations of infidelity. His current apartment lease showed a monthly rent of $2,800, steep for Millbrook, and curious for someone who'd only been in town for 6 months. I cross-referenced his employment history with news articles about his former hospitals. At Regional Medical Center in Grand Rapids, Ronan had been reassigned, following an internal investigation into inappropriate relationships with subordinates. At Mercy Hospital in Lansing, he'd resigned abruptly after questions arose about expense account irregularities. Ronan Hale wasn't just a cheater. He was a predator with a pattern of targeting vulnerable women in workplace settings. Caroline wasn't his first victim, and she wouldn't be his last. Armed with this information, I began planning a systematic dismantling of their relationship. The key was patience and precision. One careless move would alert them to my knowledge, giving them time to regroup and potentially turn the situation against me. Step 1 was financial preparation. I consulted with David Chen, a divorce attorney recommended by a colleague. Chen was direct and practical, explaining my legal options without sugarcoating the realities. Michigan is a no-fault state, he said, but adultery can impact spousal support decisions, especially if marital funds were used to support the affair. Document everything: hotel receipts, restaurant charges, gifts purchased with joint accounts. I showed him Caroline's burner phone photos and the evidence I'd gathered about her movements. This is comprehensive, Chen admitted. But unless she's used marital assets to fund the affair, it won't significantly impact the financial settlement. What about the workplace relationship? Her supervisor is exploiting his position. That's a hospital HR issue, not a legal matter for divorce court. You could report it, but it won't change your settlement. Chen's assessment was disappointing, but not surprising. The legal system would treat Caroline's betrayal as a personal matter with minimal financial consequences. If I wanted real justice, I'd have to create it myself. That evening, Caroline came home excited about a team-building retreat Ronan was planning for the billing department. "We're going to Traverse City for the weekend," she said. "It'll be nice to get away and focus on improving our workflow processes." "Sounds romantic," I said without looking up from my newspaper. "It's not romantic, Elias. It's professional development." "Of course. When is this retreat?" "Next weekend, Friday through Sunday." I nodded and made a mental note. A weekend retreat would give me time to implement phase 2 of my plan. The following Tuesday, instead of going to the gym, I drove to Murphy's bar. Rick, the bartender, was working the early shift. "Elias, how are things? Complicated? Can I ask you a favor?" "Depends on the favor." I slid a 20 across the bar. "Caroline and Ronan come in here regularly. Next time they're here, could you take a few photos? Nothing creepy, just evidence that they're together." Rick pocketed the 20. "I don't like getting involved in marital problems." They made it your problem when they decided to conduct their affair in your establishment. Fair point. Yeah, I'll get you some photos. From Murphy's, I drove to the hospital. Instead of visiting Caroline's floor, I went to the cafeteria and struck up a conversation with Janet Morrison, Ronan's boss. She was eating lunch alone, reviewing budget reports. Excuse me, are you Janet Morrison? I'm Elias Turner. My wife Caroline works in medical billing. Oh, yes, Caroline. She's wonderful, very dedicated. That's what she tells me. She speaks highly of her new supervisor, Ronan Hale. Janet's expression shifted slightly. Yes, Ronan is energetic. He's brought some new ideas to the department. Caroline mentioned he's planning a team retreat in Traverse City. That sounds expensive. I wasn't aware of any approved retreats, Janet said carefully. Maybe it's still in the planning stages. Caroline gets excited about these professional development opportunities. I'm sure she does. Janet's tone had cooled. If you'll excuse me, I need to get back to work. I'd planted the seed. When Ronan submitted his retreat proposal, if he bothered to submit one at all, Janet would be watching carefully. That weekend, while Caroline was supposedly visiting her sister in Detroit, I followed her to Ronan's apartment. They left together Saturday morning in his BMW, returning Sunday evening with shopping bags and the relaxed demeanor of a couple who'd spent the weekend playing house. Sunday night, Caroline regaled me with stories about her sister's new job and the wonderful restaurants they'd tried. Every detail was fabricated, delivered with the casual confidence of someone who'd grown comfortable with deception. How was your weekend? She asked. Quiet. I worked on the Morrison Project blueprints and went to the gym. You spend too much time at that gym. It's not healthy to be so obsessive about exercise. I like the routine. It helps me think clearly. About what? Work, life, the future. I met her eyes. Our future. Caroline looked away first. I'm tired. I'm going to bed early. As she prepared for bed, I sat in my office reviewing the evidence I'd accumulated. Photos, text messages, witness statements, financial records, employment history. I had enough material to destroy both Caroline and Ronan professionally and personally. The question was timing and methodology. My phone buzzed with a text from Rick. They're here now, getting cozy in booth 7. I drove to Murphy's and parked across the street. Through the window, I could see Caroline and Ronan sharing appetizers and holding hands across the table. They looked like any other couple enjoying a romantic evening out. Rick caught my eye and held up his phone, indicating he was documenting their interaction. I nodded and drove home. An hour later, Caroline returned, claiming she'd been at the grocery store and stopped for coffee with Kendra. How's Kendra doing? I asked. Good. She's dealing with some personnel issues at work. Confidential stuff, you know how HR is. I'm sure she handles it professionally. She does. Kendra's very good at her job. I wondered if those personnel issues involved covering for Caroline and Ronan's relationship, or if Kendra was actively helping them navigate hospital policies. The next morning, I called in sick again and drove to the hospital parking garage. Caroline's Honda was parked on level 3, next to Ronan's BMW. Even their parking arrangement suggested an established relationship. I took photos of the cars, then went to the hospital cafeteria and bought coffee. While waiting in line, I overheard 2 nurses discussing departmental gossip. Did you hear about the new supervisor in billing? One asked. Ronan something? What about him? Apparently, he's been very hands-on with staff development, if you know what I mean. Seriously? That's what I heard. Janet Morrison is asking questions. The hospital grapevine was already buzzing with rumors about Ronan's behavior. It wouldn't take much to transform speculation into formal complaints. I spent the rest of the week documenting Caroline's lies and gathering additional evidence. Rick provided photos from Murphy's showing Caroline and Ronan kissing in their booth. Beth Martinez confirmed their continued Tuesday meetings at the Millbrook Inn. Frank, the doorman at Ronan's building, logged their visits with military precision. By Friday, I had a comprehensive file documenting their affair. More importantly, I had a plan for exposing it in a way that would maximize the consequences for both of them. Caroline left work early Friday, claiming she needed to pack for the team retreat. She spent an hour selecting outfits that were far too elegant for professional development, including the lingerie she'd bought the previous weekend. "Have fun at your retreat," I said, as she loaded her suitcase into the Honda. "I'll try to learn something useful," she replied, kissing my cheek with the same casual affection she'd shown for months. After she left, I opened my laptop and began composing emails that would change everything. Saturday morning, I sent my first email to Janet Morrison at her personal address, which I'd found through the hospital's staff directory. The subject line read, "Concerns about department supervision. Dear Ms. Morrison, I hope this message finds you well. I'm writing to share some concerns about supervisory conduct in the medical billing department. I've become aware of what appears to be an inappropriate relationship between Ronan Hale and one of his subordinates. As someone who clearly cares about maintaining professional standards, I thought you should be aware of this situation. I've attached some documentation that might be relevant to your evaluation of departmental management practices. Sincerely, a concerned observer." The attachments included photos of Caroline and Ronan at Murphy's bar, documentation of their hotel meetings, and a summary of Ronan's employment history at previous hospitals. I didn't identify Caroline by name. That would come later, when Janet conducted her own investigation. My second email went to the hospital's anonymous ethics hotline, reporting a supervisor who was engaging in inappropriate relationships with subordinates and potentially misusing department resources for personal entertainment. The third email was more personal. I sent it to Ronan's ex-wife in Grand Rapids, introducing myself as someone who'd discovered her former husband's current activities and thought she might be interested in knowing that his behavior hadn't changed. She responded within hours. "Thank you for reaching out. Ronan destroyed our marriage and nearly ruined my career. I'd be happy to share my experiences with anyone who might be dealing with similar situations." By Sunday evening, I'd set multiple investigations in motion without directly implicating myself. The hospital would be forced to examine Ronan's conduct. His ex-wife was prepared to provide testimony about his pattern of workplace predation. The ethics complaint would trigger a formal review process. Caroline returned from her retreat Sunday night, glowing with happiness and full of stories about team-building exercises and strategic planning sessions. "It was incredibly productive," she said, unpacking clothes that clearly hadn't been worn. "Ronan really knows how to motivate people to perform at their best." "I'm sure he does. Did you learn anything that will help with your work?" "Absolutely. We developed some innovative approaches to workflow management that should improve our efficiency significantly." I nodded and helped her carry her suitcase upstairs, marveling at the elaborate fiction she'd constructed. Every lie was delivered with conviction, as if she'd convinced herself that her weekend with Ronan had actually been professional development. Monday morning, I went to work as usual, but my mind was focused on the chain reactions I'd initiated. By now, Janet Morrison would be reviewing my email and attachments. The ethics hotline would be processing the complaint. Ronan's ex-wife would be considering how to use the information I'd provided. At lunch, I drove past the hospital and saw Janet Morrison's car in the parking garage. She was working through lunch, probably investigating the concerns I'd raised. That evening, Caroline seemed distracted during dinner. "Everything okay at work?" I asked. "Fine. Just some administrative stuff that Ronan needs to handle? Nothing serious, I hope." "No, just policy clarifications. You know how bureaucratic hospitals can be." I knew exactly how bureaucratic they could be, especially when investigating potential ethics violations. Tuesday, Caroline didn't mention her usual evening plans. Instead, she came home at her normal time and seemed nervous throughout dinner. "I think I'll skip yoga tonight," she announced. "I'm feeling a bit under the weather." "That's probably smart. You've been working hard lately. She spent the evening on her phone, texting frequently, and speaking in hushed tones when she thought I wasn't listening. The conversation fragments I caught suggested crisis management, reassurances, strategy discussions, damage control. Wednesday morning brought the first visible crack in Caroline's facade. She emerged from the shower looking pale and stressed. "I might be late tonight," she said. "We're having some departmental meetings about policy compliance." Sounds important. It is. Very important. That afternoon, I received a call from Rick at Murphy's bar. "Your wife and her boyfriend were here last night," he said. "They looked stressed. Lot of intense conversation, not much romance." "Did you hear anything specific?" "Something about investigations and keeping stories straight. The guy seemed worried about his job." Perfect. The pressure was building exactly as I'd planned. Thursday evening, Caroline came home visibly shaken. She went straight to our bedroom and closed the door, spending an hour on what sounded like a very difficult phone conversation. When she emerged, her eyes were red from crying. "Caroline? What's wrong?" "Work stuff. It's complicated." "Can I help?" "No. This is something I need to handle myself." She barely ate dinner and went to bed early, claiming a headache. I lay awake listening to her toss and turn, knowing that her comfortable world was beginning to collapse. Friday morning, Caroline received a phone call that changed everything. I was in the kitchen when her phone rang, and I heard her answer with unusual formality. "Yes, this is Caroline Turner. Yes, I can come in early. I understand." After hanging up, she sat at the kitchen table staring at her phone. "Problem at work?" I asked. "I need to go in early for a meeting with HR." That sounds serious. It's just routine, policy review stuff. But her hands were shaking as she gathered her things, and she forgot to kiss me goodbye. A routine she'd maintained even during the worst periods of our marriage. I called in sick and drove to the hospital, parking where I could observe the administrative entrance. At 8:30, I saw Caroline enter the building, her posture tense and defensive. At 9:15, Ronan arrived, looking equally grim. At 11:30, both of them emerged from the building carrying cardboard boxes, the universal symbol of employment termination. I followed Caroline home, arriving a few minutes after she did. I found her in our bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the contents of her box: personal photos, a coffee mug, a small plant, and various office supplies. "How did the meeting go?" I asked from the doorway. She looked up with tears streaming down her face. "They fired me." "What? Why?" "Violation of workplace ethics policies. Inappropriate relationship with a supervisor." I sat beside her on the bed, playing the role of the supportive husband. "I'm so sorry, Caroline. What kind of inappropriate relationship?" They have evidence that Ronan and I—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "Evidence of what?" "That we were having an affair." I let the silence stretch between us, watching her struggle with the decision of whether to continue lying or finally tell the truth. "Were you?" I asked quietly. Caroline closed her eyes. "Yes." "How long?" 4 months. "I see." She looked at me with surprise. "That's all you're going to say?" "What would you like me to say?" "I don't know. Something. Anything. You're acting like I just told you I changed my hair color." I stood and walked to the window, looking out at our neighborhood, the life we'd built together over 15 years. "I've known for weeks, Caroline." "What?" "I've known about Ronan, about the hotel meetings, about all of it." "How?" "Does it matter? The question is what we do now." Caroline stared at me with a mixture of shock and growing fear. "What do you mean?" "I mean you've been fired for having an affair with your supervisor. You've been lying to me for months. You've been planning to divorce me and take half of everything I've worked for. So what do we do now?" "Elias, I can explain." "No need. I have photos, text messages, Witness statements, hotel records. I know about Tuesday evenings at the Millbrook Inn. I know about your weekend trips that weren't team retreats. I know about your burner phone and your conversations with Kendra about divorce strategy. Caroline's face went white. You've been spying on me. I've been protecting myself from someone who was planning to destroy my life while pretending to love me. I do love you. No, Caroline. You love the security I provide while you explore other options. That's not the same thing. She began crying harder, but I felt nothing. Months of planning had burned away any sympathy I might have felt for her situation. What happens now? She asked. Now you face the consequences of your choices. What does that mean? I smiled, and she flinched at the expression on my face. It means this is just the beginning. Caroline spent the weekend in a state of barely controlled panic, making frantic phone calls to Kendra and Ronan, trying to understand how their carefully planned affair had been exposed. I listened to fragments of her conversations, hearing the fear in her voice as she realized how completely her world had collapsed. Ronan, it seemed, was not handling the crisis well. According to Caroline's phone calls, he was blaming her for the exposure, claiming she'd been careless with their communications. The romantic partner who'd promised to support her through a difficult divorce had transformed into a desperate man trying to save his own career. Sunday evening, Caroline finally confronted me directly. Did you report us to the hospital? Does it matter? Yes, it matters. My career is ruined. Your career was ruined the moment you decided to sleep with your supervisor. I just made sure there were consequences. You destroyed my life. No, Caroline, you destroyed your life. I just documented the process. She stared at me with a mixture of hatred and fear. What else have you done? Nothing illegal, nothing unethical. I simply made sure that people knew the truth about your behavior. What people? Relevant people. Caroline's phone rang. She answered it with trembling hands. Hello? What? When? Oh, God. She hung up and looked at me with pure terror. That was my mother. Someone sent her photos of me with Ronan. How unfortunate. You sent photos to my parents? I sent photos to people who care about you and might be concerned about your well-being. You bastard. Careful, Caroline. You're not in a position to make accusations about other people's character. Her phone rang again. This time it was her sister, who'd apparently received similar photos. Then Kendra called, reporting that rumors were spreading throughout the hospital about Caroline and Ronan's affair. By Monday morning, Caroline's humiliation was complete. Her family knew about the affair. Her friends knew about the affair. Her former colleagues knew about the affair. The comfortable life she'd built while deceiving me had evaporated overnight. But I wasn't finished. Monday afternoon, I received a call from Janet Morrison. Mr. Turner? This is Janet Morrison from Millbrook General. I was hoping we could meet to discuss some recent developments in our medical billing department. Of course. Is there a problem? There have been some personnel issues that might affect your wife's employment status. I'd like to explain the situation and discuss our options moving forward. We met at a coffee shop near the hospital. Janet was professional but clearly uncomfortable with the conversation. I want you to know that we take workplace ethics very seriously, she began. When we received reports about inappropriate conduct in the billing department, we conducted a thorough investigation. What kind of inappropriate conduct? A romantic relationship between a supervisor and subordinate which violates our ethics policies. We've terminated both employees involved. I see. Was my wife one of those employees? Yes. I'm very sorry, Mr. Turner. I know this must be difficult for you. It is. But I appreciate the hospital's commitment to maintaining professional standards. Janet looked relieved. We're prepared to provide positive references for Caroline's future employment, assuming she maintains confidentiality about the circumstances of her termination. That's very generous. We don't want this situation to impact her ability to find new employment. She was a good employee aside from this lapse in judgment. I thanked Janet for her professionalism and left the coffee shop feeling satisfied. Caroline's termination was now officially documented, making it difficult for her to find comparable employment in Millbrook's small healthcare community. That evening, I found Caroline in our bedroom, staring at her laptop screen with growing despair. "No one will hire me," she said without looking up. "Every hospital in the area has heard about what happened. Maybe you should consider a different career. I've worked in medical billing for 12 years. It's all I know." "Then maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to sleep with your supervisor." She closed the laptop and looked at me with exhaustion. "What do you want, Elias? What will it take for you to stop punishing me? I want you to understand what you've done. I want you to face the consequences of your choices. I want you to experience the same humiliation and betrayal that you put me through. I get it. I made a mistake. No, Caroline. A mistake is forgetting to pay a bill or missing an appointment. What you did was a deliberate campaign of deception and betrayal that lasted 4 months. You planned to divorce me and take half of everything I've worked for while conducting an affair with another man. That's not a mistake. That's a calculated attack on our marriage. I'm sorry." "No, you're not. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry there were consequences. But you're not sorry you did it." Caroline's phone buzzed with a text message. She read it and began crying again. "What now?" I asked. "Ronan. He says we can't see each other anymore. He's moving back to Grand Rapids." "How romantic. I'm sure you'll always treasure the memory of your great love affair." "You're enjoying this?" "I'm enjoying justice. For 4 months, you made me look like a fool while you planned my destruction. Now everyone knows the truth about who you really are. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did hurt me. Every lie, every secret meeting, every moment you pretended to love me while you were planning to leave me, all of that was designed to hurt me. The only difference is that now you're experiencing the consequences." Caroline spent the next few days in a state of depression, barely leaving the bedroom except to make increasingly desperate phone calls about employment opportunities. The few interviews she managed to schedule ended badly when potential employers learned about the circumstances of her termination from the hospital. Thursday evening, she emerged from the bedroom with a suitcase. "I'm going to stay with my sister for a while," she announced. "Probably a good idea. Detroit might offer better employment opportunities." "This isn't over, Elias." "Yes, it is. Your affair is over. Your job is over. Your reputation in this town is over. Your marriage is over. Everything you built while you were deceiving me is over. I'll fight you in the divorce." "With what money? You're unemployed and unemployable. I've documented your affair comprehensively. Michigan law doesn't favor adultery in spousal support decisions. You'll be lucky to get 30% of our assets, and you'll spend most of that on legal fees." Caroline's face crumpled as she realized the full extent of her situation. "I have nothing left. You have exactly what you earned through your choices." She left without another word, and I watched her Honda disappear down our street, carrying away 15 years of marriage and deception. The house felt different without her. Cleaner, more honest, free from the tension of constant lies. I poured a glass of whiskey and sat in my office, looking at the blueprints scattered across my desk. For the first time in months, I could focus on my work without wondering what Caroline was really doing or who she was really with. The marriage was over, but my life was just beginning. My phone rang. It was Marty from the gym. "How are you holding up, son?" "Better than expected. Caroline moved out today." "How do you feel about that?" "Relieved. The lying was worse than the cheating." "What's next for you?" I looked around my office, at the house I'd worked years to afford, at the life I'd built through honest effort and careful planning. Now I rebuild, but this time I'm building something that can't be destroyed by someone else's selfishness. Sounds like a good plan. It is. I'm very good at plans. After we hung up, I opened my laptop and began researching divorce attorneys, property law, and asset protection strategies. Caroline thought she could destroy my life and walk away with half of everything I'd earned. She was about to learn how wrong she'd been. The next morning, I received an unexpected visitor. Ronan Hale stood on my front porch, looking haggard and desperate. "We need to talk," he said. I opened the door wider. "Come in." Ronan entered my living room and looked around nervously. "Nice house." "Thank you. Can I offer you coffee?" "No, I just want to understand what you want." "What I want. To make this stop. The investigation, the rumors, the destruction of our careers. What will it take?" I studied his face, seeing the desperation and fear that Caroline had described in her phone calls. "I want you to understand something, Ronan. You didn't just have an affair with my wife. You targeted a vulnerable woman in a workplace setting, exploited your position of authority, and helped her plan the destruction of her marriage. You're not a romantic figure. You're a predator." That's not how it was. That's exactly how it was. I've researched your employment history. Grand Rapids, Lansing, now here. You have a pattern of targeting subordinate employees for private relationships, then moving on when the situation becomes inconvenient. Ronan's face went pale. "You don't understand the whole situation." "I understand enough. You destroyed my marriage, Caroline's career, and your own reputation. Now you want me to help you minimize the consequences. What do you want? I want you to leave town and never contact my wife again." "I'm already leaving. I got a job in Seattle." "Good. Then we have nothing more to discuss." Ronan stood to leave, then turned back. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry about your marriage." "No, you're not. You're sorry you got caught, but you're not sorry you did it." After he left, I realized that both Caroline and Ronan had offered the same hollow apology, sorry for the consequences, but not for their choices. That afternoon, I met with David Chen, the divorce attorney, to finalize my legal strategy. "Your documentation is impressive," he said, reviewing my files. "Hotel records, photographs, witness statements, employment termination records. This should significantly impact any spousal support calculations." "What about the house?" "Michigan is a community property state, but given the circumstances of the marriage's dissolution and your wife's current employment status, you should be able to retain the house and most of your retirement assets." "How long will the process take?" 6 months to a year, depending on whether she contests the settlement." "She'll contest it. Let her. She's unemployed and facing an uphill battle. Most attorneys will require a significant retainer, which she can't afford. She'll eventually accept whatever settlement you offer." I left Chen's office feeling confident about the legal process. Caroline's affair had destroyed her negotiating position, leaving her with limited options and diminishing resources. That evening, I received a call from Caroline's sister. "Elias? This is Jennifer. I wanted to talk to you about Caroline." "How is she?" "Not good. She's been crying for days. She says you're trying to destroy her life." "I'm trying to protect myself from someone who was planning to destroy my life. She made a mistake. She made a series of calculated decisions over 4 months. That's not a mistake. That's a pattern of behavior. She's family, Elias. We've known you for 15 years. Can't you find a way to work this out?" "Caroline ended our marriage when she decided to sleep with her supervisor. I'm just making sure there are appropriate consequences for that decision." "She's talking about self-injury." That stopped me cold. "What?" "She says she has nothing left to live for. Her career is over, her marriage is over, everyone knows what she did. She feels like there's no way forward." I felt a flicker of the old concern I used to feel for Caroline, but it was quickly overwhelmed by anger at her manipulation. "Jennifer, if Caroline is threatening self-injury, she needs professional help, not a free pass from the consequences of her behavior." "So you won't consider reconciliation?" Would you take back a spouse who'd been cheating on you for 4 months while planning to divorce you and take half your assets? Jennifer was quiet for a long moment. No, I probably wouldn't. Then you understand my position. After we hung up, I sat in my empty house, wondering if Caroline's self-injury threats were genuine or just another manipulation tactic. Either way, I couldn't allow her emotional instability to derail the legal process or guilt me into accepting a settlement that rewarded her betrayal. I called David Chen and reported the self-injury threats, asking him to document them in case Caroline tried to use emotional manipulation during the divorce proceedings. It's not uncommon, Chen said. People facing the consequences of their actions often threaten self-harm to generate sympathy and avoid responsibility. Should I be concerned? If you believe the threats are genuine, you should contact the authorities, but don't let emotional manipulation influence your legal decisions. That night, I changed the locks on the house and installed a security system. Caroline had made her choice when she decided to betray our marriage. Now she would live with the consequences while I rebuilt my life on a foundation that couldn't be destroyed by someone else's deception. The war was over. I had won. But the victory felt hollow as I sat alone in the house we'd once shared, surrounded by the remnants of 15 years of marriage and the blueprints for a future I'd be building alone. Still, it was better than living a lie. 3 weeks after Caroline moved out, I received a call that changed the trajectory of my carefully orchestrated revenge. Detective Sarah Walsh from the Millbrook Police Department wanted to meet with me about a matter concerning my wife. We met at the police station, where Detective Walsh, a no-nonsense woman in her 40s, explained the situation with professional detachment. Mr. Turner, we've received reports that your wife has been making concerning statements about self-harm. Her sister filed a welfare check request, and we're required to investigate any potential threats. I see. What kind of statements? According to her sister, Carolyn has been expressing feelings of hopelessness and has made references to ending her life. Have you observed any concerning behavior? I chose my words carefully. Caroline has been under significant stress since losing her job at the hospital. She's been staying with her sister in Detroit, so I haven't had much contact with her recently. Are you aware of the circumstances surrounding her termination? Yes. She was fired for having an inappropriate relationship with her supervisor. Detective Walsh made notes in her file. How has this affected your marriage? We're in the process of divorcing. I see. Have there been any threats made against you or attempts to contact you inappropriately? No. Caroline has been focused on dealing with the consequences of her choices. After the interview, I drove home feeling unsettled. Carolyn's self-injury threats were escalating from private manipulation to public attention-seeking. Whether genuine or fabricated, they represented a potential complication to my plans. That evening, I received a call from Caroline herself. The police came to see me today, she said without preamble. I heard. Are you okay? No, Elias, I'm not okay. I've lost everything. My job, my marriage, my reputation, my future. I have nothing left. You have your health, your family, and the opportunity to rebuild your life. With what? No one will hire me. I can't afford an apartment. My parents are ashamed of me. My friends won't return my calls. Those are the natural consequences of your decisions, Caroline. I know you hate me, but I'm begging you to show some mercy. I can't take much more of this. For a moment, I felt an echo of the love I'd once felt for her. But then I remembered the months of lies, the secret meetings, the plans to divorce me and take half my assets while conducting an affair. Caroline, if you're genuinely considering harming yourself, you need professional help. But I can't fix the problems you created through your own choices. So you won't help me? I won't enable you to avoid the consequences of betraying our marriage. She hung up without another word. The next morning, I received a call from Jennifer, Caroline's sister. She tried to eliminate herself last night. Jennifer said, her voice shaking. Pills. I found her in time and called an ambulance. I felt the world shift around me. Is she okay? She's in the hospital. Stable. But they're keeping her for psychiatric evaluation. Jennifer, I'm sorry. I never wanted... Yes, you did. You wanted to destroy her, and you succeeded. That's not fair. Caroline destroyed herself through her own choices. You could have handled this privately. Instead, you made sure everyone knew about her affair. You turned her into a public joke. She turned herself into a public joke when she decided to cheat with her supervisor. She's in the psychiatric ward, Elias. She almost died because she couldn't live with the shame you've caused her. After Jennifer hung up, I sat in my kitchen staring at my coffee, trying to process what had happened. Caroline's self-injury attempt was either a genuine breakdown or an elaborate manipulation designed to generate sympathy and pressure me into a more favorable divorce settlement. Either way, it complicated everything. I called David Chen and explained the situation. This changes the dynamic significantly, he said. If your wife is genuinely mentally unstable, it could affect her competency to participate in divorce proceedings. It also generates sympathy that could influence a judge's decisions about spousal support. What do you recommend? We proceed carefully, document everything, but avoid any actions that could be construed as harassment or emotional abuse. The last thing we want is for you to appear callous toward a spouse in crisis. That afternoon, I drove to Detroit and visited Caroline in the hospital. She looked small and fragile in the hospital bed, a stark contrast to the confident woman who'd been planning my destruction just weeks earlier. Why did you come? She asked when she saw me. Because despite everything, I don't want you to die. Why not? It would solve all your problems. Caroline, I wanted you to face consequences for your actions, not to destroy yourself. What's the difference? My life is over either way. I sat in the visitor's chair, studying her face. She looked genuinely broken, not manipulative. Your life isn't over. You're 37 years old. You can rebuild. How? Everyone knows what I did. I can't get a job. I can't afford to live independently. My own family is ashamed of me. Then you'll have to start over somewhere else. With what money? That's something we'll need to work out in the divorce settlement. Caroline closed her eyes. I don't want to fight you anymore, Elias. I just want this to be over. Then don't fight. Accept a reasonable settlement and move on with your life. What's reasonable? Enough money to relocate and start over, but not enough to reward you for destroying our marriage. How much? 20% of our assets and no spousal support. Caroline opened her eyes and looked at me with something approaching her old sharpness. That's not reasonable. That's punishment. No, Caroline. Punishment would be leaving you with nothing. This gives you enough to rebuild while acknowledging that your affair destroyed our marriage. I'll fight it. With what resources? You're unemployed, unemployable in this area, and facing significant legal bills. You can spend what little money you might get on attorney fees, or you can take the settlement and use it to start over. She turned away from me. I need time to think. Take all the time you need, but understand that my offer won't improve with time. I left the hospital feeling conflicted. Caroline's self-injury attempt had generated genuine sympathy, but it hadn't changed the fundamental facts of our situation. She'd betrayed our marriage, lost her job through her own poor decisions, and was now facing the natural consequences of her actions. The following week, Caroline was released from the hospital and entered an outpatient therapy program. Jennifer called to update me on her progress. She's doing better, Jennifer said. The therapy is helping her process what happened and develop coping strategies. I'm glad to hear that. She wants to accept your settlement offer. Good. I'll have my attorney draw up the papers. Elias, I want you to know that I understand why you're angry. What Caroline did was wrong, but I hope you can find some forgiveness in your heart. I'm not angry anymore, Jennifer. I'm just done. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks later. Caroline received 20% of our assets, enough to relocate and establish herself in a new city, but far less than she would have gotten without the documented affair. She moved to Phoenix, where she found work with a small medical practice that didn't require references from her previous employer. I kept the house, my retirement accounts, and my professional reputation intact. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I received a letter from Caroline. She'd found steady employment, was attending regular therapy sessions, and had started dating someone new, a teacher who knew about her past and accepted it. "I want you to know that I'm sorry," she wrote. "Not just sorry that I got caught, but genuinely sorry for what I did to our marriage and to you. I understand now that my affair wasn't about romance or finding my true love. It was about running away from problems in our marriage that we should have addressed together. I know you'll probably never forgive me, and I accept that. But I want you to know that the consequences you imposed forced me to confront who I had become and make real changes in my life. In a strange way, your refusal to let me escape responsibility may have saved my life. I hope you find happiness, Elias. You deserve better than what I gave you." I read the letter twice, then filed it away with the other documents from our divorce. Caroline's apology seemed genuine, but it didn't change what had happened or how it had ended. A year later, I sold the house and moved to a smaller place closer to downtown. The memories in our old house had become a burden rather than a comfort, and I needed a fresh start. At Marty's gym, I continued training and eventually started teaching basic boxing classes to other men dealing with relationship problems. There was something therapeutic about helping others channel their anger and frustration into productive physical activity. "You've changed," Marty observed one evening after I'd finished teaching a class. "How so?" "When you first came here, you were angry and hurt. Now you're just focused." I learned something important through all of this. "What's that?" "That I'm capable of protecting myself. For years, I let Caroline make me feel like I was lucky to have her, like I should be grateful for whatever attention she was willing to give me. When I discovered her affair, I realized I deserved better. And now? Now I know what I'm worth, and I won't settle for less." 2 years after the divorce, I started dating again. Nothing serious at first. Just dinner and conversation with women who appreciated honesty and direct communication. I was upfront about my divorce and the reasons for it, figuring that anyone who couldn't handle the truth wasn't worth my time. Eventually, I met Sarah, a nurse practitioner who'd been through her own difficult divorce. She appreciated my straightforward approach to relationships and my insistence on complete honesty about feelings, concerns, and expectations. "You're very different from most men I've dated," she told me after we'd been seeing each other for several months. "How so?" "You say exactly what you mean. No games, no hidden agendas, no manipulation. It's refreshing. I don't have time for games anymore. Life's too short to waste on people who aren't genuine." 3 years after my divorce from Caroline, Sarah and I got married in a small ceremony attended by close friends and family. The marriage was built on a foundation of complete honesty, mutual respect, and shared values, everything my first marriage had lacked. On our wedding day, I thought briefly about Caroline and wondered how her life in Phoenix was progressing. I hoped she'd found genuine happiness and learned from the mistakes that had destroyed our marriage. But mostly, I focused on the future I was building with Sarah, a future based on truth, trust, and the hard-earned knowledge that I deserved a partner who valued me enough to be honest about her feelings and faithful to our commitment. Standing at the altar, looking into Sarah's eyes as we exchanged vows, I realized that Caroline's betrayal had ultimately been a gift. It had forced me to confront my own complacency, develop my strength, and refuse to accept less than I deserved. The blueprint for my new life was solid, built on a foundation that couldn't be destroyed by deception or betrayal. As Sarah and I kissed to seal our marriage, I felt genuinely happy for the first time in years.